essential workers who clean and protect buildings, residential workers, and it's the home of airport and school workers. We're here to honor the 4 lives that were tragically and senselessly lost on Monday. And at 32BJ, we're here to specifically support the family of Alain Etienne, a security officer who's been part of our union since 2017. Mr. Etienne was a father, a loving partner to Rochelle, a brother, and a son. And he was a security officer working in the lobby of 345 Park Avenue, doing his job, as he always did, engaging tenants, talking about their lives and their families, as so many security officers do in this city every single day. But I will also say that security officers in this city know that they put their life on the line when they put on their uniforms. They're there to do a job, being the first line of defense in each of these buildings, and they know that they're often in harm's way. We know this because we lost Idrissa Kamara in 2015 in very similar circumstances at a federal building on Varick Street. These essential workers are often overlooked and unseen until moments like this that reveal the true value of their work and their contributions. At 32BJ, we will honor Mr. Alain Etienne as a 32BJ hero and a New York City hero. I also want to thank you, Zohran, for bringing us together and uniting us both in the opportunities in the city and uniting us now in the hardest of moments. This is the 4th time we've had the opportunity for you to join us in this building since you became the Democratic nominee. In each case, you've come to listen, to support, to unite people together, and to show positive leadership, and that's a special contribution that we appreciate. I also want to appreciate the outpouring of support that the union's been the recipient of for Mr. Etienne, and that's come to the union, that's come and been conveyed by so many people. It's come from federal, state, and city elected officials that have reached out. It's come from Bruce McLean and Dan Sepulveda from McLean Security, who are here today to also support the family. And it's come from other security companies that at other times would be competitors, but have now united in this moment. And it's come from the real estate industry that has employed so many security officers in this city. I also want to recognize that Blackstone and Rudin companies have also lost folks from their corporate families, and our heart extends out to them, as well as the NYPD and the family of Officer Islam. Our hearts go out to all of those impacted. So now I would like to introduce Smith Etienne, the younger brother of Alain, who would like to say a few words, and I'll just note that he does not plan to answer any questions today.
How's everyone doing today? As you guys all know, we lost a hero a couple days ago. He didn't wear no cape. He didn't have any fancy gears. He wore a security officer uniform. My brother Alan was a hard-working man. Always get up on time. Always doing overtime. Always doing his part to make the city of New York a little bit safer every day. Alan was a brother, a son, a loving father, fantastic father. He was a smart dude. As the oldest brother, I look up to him in everything that I do. He always aspired to be a filmmaker, and me personally, I'm a filmmaker. With his guidance and support, I am where I am today as one of the top filmmakers in the Haitian community, and I owe him everything. He's a people person. He's extremely extroverted. Everybody loves him. He knows how to make friends. He knows how to keep contact with everybody that he loves and cares for. It's definitely a big loss for the family. It's a loss for his friends. It's a loss for the city that we're from, Gonaive. It's a loss for Haiti. And New York City has lost a hero. As we go through this difficult time, I ask you guys to keep us in your prayers. Keep each one of the other victims' family in prayer. And take this opportunity to look into new legislation that can help protect people like himself, people that put their life on the line every single day to do their part to make the city safer, to put their life on the line to protect others. And that's what he did. And we've been getting a lot of calls. A lot of people have been contacting us, trying to help. And I'm grateful for that. I want to inform you that we have a GoFundMe set up specifically for his kids. So anybody that's been contacting us, you can help that way. And a simple prayer goes a long way. I want to thank you guys for being here. And again, let's start prioritizing people who prioritizes us. Let's start prioritizing the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the security officers, the policemen. Because we don't want this to be a thing that goes on every month, every couple of years, and everybody comes out, the media covers it, and after a couple of days, couple of weeks, everybody move on and forget about the victims. I don't want to see a room full of cameras, a room full of medias, every time somebody decides to commit a cowardly act. And I think there are things that we can do to prevent such action to happen on a regular basis. At the end of the day, this is the United States of America, a country full of opportunities and resources, a country of dedication, a country that gets to the finish line every single time. And now it's time to get to the finish line to make sure we have a secure city, a secure state, and a secure country. And I think we can do it if we put the efforts together. And I hope this is the last time a family members, a wife, a mother, a daughter has to stand in front of the press for another situation like this. I want to thank you guys so much for being here again, and that will be it.
All right, thank you, Smith. And now I'd like to introduce Shamsul Haq, the co-founder of the Bangladeshi American Police Association and a retired senior NYPD commander.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I stand before you with profound sadness and sorrow for the brutal killing of our brother, Officer Didarul Islam. I stand before you today as someone who proudly served the NYPD for the past 21 years. I am also the co-founder and former president of the Bangladeshi American Police Association, an organization that helped recruit hundreds of Bangladeshis into NYPD. I want to thank Mr. Mamdani for visiting the family members earlier today. It means a lot to the family members and the Bangladeshi community. But today I speak not only as a former officer, but I speak as someone who feels like a family member grieving, because that's what it feels like. Officer Islam was more than a fellow officer. He was one of us, and losing him feels like losing a brother. Officer Islam was brutally killed in broad daylight. We knew the risk. We all know the risk when someone takes the oath. But we never truly expect the day would come when someone we know, someone so close, is taken away from us so suddenly and so violently. This tragedy is deeply personal to me, because Officer Islam and I came from the same district in Bangladesh. We spoke the same dialect. We share similar customs. We understand each other. And his death left a hole in our community and in our hearts. Right after 9/11, just like me, a several dozen of us joined the NYPD to do two things. One was to protect a city that we call our home, a city that we love and care, but also to dispel the misconception that you are a Muslim and there is somehow a connection to terrorism. So after several years, we decided, I called my friends to open up the Bangladeshi American Police Association. And our goal was threefold. One is to increase number of Bangladeshis to NYPD. Second was to help them go up the ranks. And the third is to bridge between the Bangladeshi American community and the police department. But since then, the Bangladeshi community has grown in the NYPD. More families have encouraged their sons and daughters to join, and they have felt pride watching their children to serve New York City as a police officer. But today, that pride is somewhat overwhelmed by pain. This brutal loss has shaken us to the core. It is just not a tragedy for the police officer's Islam's wife, his children, and his family, but it is a tragedy for all of us, for all fellow officers, for all our community. We'll never forget Officer Islam's bravery, his service, and his sacrifice. His memory will live on in our hearts and in our community and NYPD. May Allah grant him highest place in Jannah, and we'll all carry forward his legacy, his honor, and with unity and with love. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And so first I would just say, Zohran, thank you again for coming to meet with us, meet with Mr. Etienne's family today, and with that I will turn it over to you.
I want to thank Manny and 32BJ for having us here today and for allowing me the opportunity to convey my heartfelt condolences to Alan's family, who we heard from just earlier. I want to thank retired Lieutenant Shamsul Haq, who co-founded the Bangladeshi American Police Association, of which Officer Islam was a member. I landed back in New York City this morning and went directly to the home of Officer Islam, where I met with members of his family, young and old, who are heartbroken over the loss of their son, of their brother, their father, their husband, their friend, heartbroken in a way that words cannot fully describe. And as we spent close to an hour together, there were moments that stayed with me. Moments like when Officer Islam's sisters asked me, who will we call Bhaiya now? Moments like when his brother-in-law told me of how it was Officer Islam that brought him to this country, that took him to get his first learner's permit, that got him his first job working at a restaurant in Union Square, where they would speak together every single day. And when he told me that for him, Officer Islam was an open door, and now that door would be forever closed. And I know that in the way in which that home is shattered, the way in which it is quieter and emptier than ever before, there are other homes across this city experiencing that same kind of loss. Other homes where families are asking themselves questions for which there are no answers. And while we grieve the loss and the murder of 4 New Yorkers, we know that there are others recuperating now in hospital, and that millions of New Yorkers are praying for them all. And while I will not say the name of the gunman I want to talk about those that we lost. We've heard from Alan's family of a man who was the father of 2 children. We've read of how his smile lit up every room, how it was as warm as it was infectious, and of a man who did a job that is so often overlooked, and yet it is that first greeting that so many feel when they come home. And so it was him that was also in that first line of fire just a few days ago. We've heard of Officer Islam, a police officer who leaves behind 2 young children, a pregnant wife due to give birth just in the next month, 2 aging parents, one of whom is struggling in his own health. And we know also of Wesley Lepatner, who was a New Yorker that shone brightly across this city, who served on the boards of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the UJA Federation, the Heschel School, who served on the board of the Yale University Library Council, who is remembered by friends and by colleagues for the incredible achievements she leaves behind, and for the 2 children and husband that mourn her today, as do all New Yorkers. And also of Julia Hyman, a 27-year-old New Yorker who grew up here, who attended Riverdale High School, captained 3 different teams in her senior year, attended Cornell University, for which she just went to a 5-year reunion, and was remembered by colleagues at her workplace today as a superstar. A life cut short by a senseless act of violence. And as New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and Americans across the country mourn this mass shooting, we are reminded that no matter how strong our gun laws are in this state, we are only as safe as the weakest laws in this nation. And so in this moment, the onus is on all of us to follow the words of Alan's brother and to put forward a vision of stronger gun laws. And I echo the call from Governor Hochul for a nationwide ban on assault rifles, as it is horrifying to each and every one of us in this room and beyond that a man with such documented mental health struggles was able to purchase a weapon, leave alone a weapon of such devastating capability. And we know that the consequences of national inaction, though we feel them this week in Midtown, we know that they join a list of so many other places across this country. Be they Uvalde, be they El Paso, be they Sandy Hook, be they Charleston. As mayor, I will lead calls to ensure that we pass the legislation necessary beyond New York, such that every New Yorker can rest assured that we need not prepare for the next iteration of this horrific mass shooting. And we know that mass shootings are sadly all too familiar for New Yorkers themselves, as we experience them whether on our street corners or even on public transit. And though we have made strides towards making this city one that is free of that gun violence, we know that there is so much work to be done. And in this moment of mourning and of grief, I want to thank law enforcement for their response to the horrific shooting on Monday and their work in keeping New Yorkers safe. I ask that in this moment we come together as New Yorkers and we remember the 4 of our neighbors that were killed. We honor their memories and we live up to the way in which they led their lives. Thank you. Hi, Marcia. Thank you.
I'm wondering, I know you just talked about the fact to honor the people who responded Monday. And the reason I'm asking this question is I wonder if your views about the NYPD have changed over time, especially in light of this shooting and the fact that both Governor Cuomo and Mayor Adams have criticized your past statements about the SRT, the Strategic Response Group, which didn't respond because they claimed that you said it should be disbanded. Do you still believe that? And do you want to send any kind of a message or feeling to the police department about views that you now have developed?
Over the course of this race, I've been very clear about my view of public safety and the critical role that police have. Officers are tasked with delivering while we ask them to respond to nearly every failure of the social safety net. And the vision that we've put forward in this campaign, despite what others may say, is not to defund the police. It is, in fact, to allow those officers to respond to these serious crimes that many of them signed up to address, and to do so by ensuring that we ask them to focus on those crimes, and we ask mental health professionals to respond to calls of mental health crises. And as it pertains to the Strategic Response Group, when it was first formed, there was an intention for its use to be more akin to the manner in which it was deployed earlier this week. What we have found, however, is the city has come to rely upon the Strategic Response Group as its primary means of response to acts of protests across the city when New Yorkers exercise their First Amendment rights. And that decision in asking the members of that unit to respond to protests, as opposed to what was the stated reason, is a decision that has led to the violation of a number of New Yorkers' civil rights. And it's a decision that has been the basis of my critique of the use of the group towards that end. And what I would also say in this moment is that it is beyond me that politicians are looking to use these days to score such cynical political points on the very day that I held the father of Officer Islam in my arms as he could not utter a single word, and as I felt him sobbing at the memory of his 36-year-old son who will never come home. To visit that family, to meet those children, to understand what this man meant to so many, and to hear from his brother-in-law that today was the day that they had timed their vacation together so that they could visit a water park in New Jersey, and that the brother-in-law's children knew they were supposed to go, Officer Islam's children knew they were supposed to go, and yet they were at home mourning a father who will never return. This is a time to honor those memories. This is a time to lead this city in coming together, not a moment to try and score the very points that turn so many New Yorkers away from politics.
Henry?
Hi, Mr. Mamdani.
Hi. Thank you.
I'm sorry that you're coming back.
Thank you.
I was actually just with former Governor Cuomo, and he was asked specifically, about a statement I believe you already made a day or two ago, that cheap political points, which you just said should not be scored in a moment like this. And he said effectively, if he doesn't like it, perhaps he should retract some of the words he has said previously, talking about police being racist or anti-LGBTQ, or that they should be defunded or dismantled. So this is a little bit of what Marcia asked, but as you've grown and reflected, and I feel, in fairness to you, you've been good about talking about growing and reflecting and always having conversations. Do you wish you hadn't said some of those things a few years back?
My statements in 2020 were ones made amidst a frustration that many New Yorkers held at the murder of George Floyd and the inability to deliver on what Eric Adams, of all people, described as the right for all of us to be able to enjoy safety and justice, that we need not choose between the two. I know that Governor Cuomo is far more comfortable in the past, whether it be his own or whether it be in attacking me for tweets made before I was even an assembly member. What I have said time and time again is the campaign that I am leading, the campaign that I am asking New Yorkers to consider, is one that has been clear on its public safety approach. It's one that speaks about a desire to work with police officers. And what has been quite frustrating to me has been the inability of so many, including the former governor, to reckon with the crisis we face in this moment, where 200 officers are leaving the department every month. A leading cause of this is forced overtime. And all they have to offer, they being these politicians of the past, are the same ideas they put forward years ago. What I am speaking of is a vision that will not only address public safety, but also keep officers in this very police department, will ensure that they can actually respond to the crimes that are being committed in this city. Because as we've seen in the first quarter of this year, we were only able to resolve 35% of all of those crimes that were reported. And part of that is a reflection of asking officers to do nearly every single thing we can think of. And so I'm proud of the public safety platform we've put together. And I would say that for the former governor to have spent an entire day speaking almost exclusively about me and barely about the New Yorkers who have been killed is indicative of the very politics New Yorkers want to leave in the past. We want to honor the New Yorkers who have been taken from us far too soon. We want to know their stories. They are not merely statistics. We want to know of their smiles, their hopes, their dreams. And yet here we have a former governor calling every reporter he can find to speak about tweets. What kind of leadership is that?
Hi.
Hi, Ms.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
I want you actually to tell us a little bit about your trip, but first, if possible, you've said that people need to come together, and this is obviously in the same vein as Henry Hirsch's questions, but you're saying that people need to come together. Do you bear some of the responsibility for having said such negative things about the NYPD, in some instances that their tears are healing the world, or, are you saying you've grown since that, and are you part of the coming together? Do you need to change your message or say something different? And if so, what is that message for people about how you will support law enforcement, how you will feel towards your police officers if you have anything, but also when you're done with that, you can tell us.
Yes, absolutely. To be the mayor of this city is to work closely with law enforcement to deliver that public safety. And the experience that I've had in running for mayor has been a privilege in getting to know more and more rank and file members of the department, in understanding just how difficult we have made their job. And as I visited Officer Islam's home this morning and met with another officer who told me of how she has sadly had to console other families of police officers in the past, it is clear to me, as it is clear to so many New Yorkers, of the immense risk that so many take upon when they do this work. And what I will be as the mayor is someone who recognizes the work that these officers do, who looks to ensure that they can actually deliver on that same work that brought them to this department, and who is focused on the outcome of public safety. Because what has happened far too often is a distilling of that which either provides or denies New Yorkers safety into a political discourse, where we spend far more of our time trying to score these kinds of points than in asking ourselves, how can we ensure that New Yorkers are safe? And while we have made strides in that safety, clearly we are still home to a site of a senseless mass shooting. And so there is much work for us to do here in New York City. But there's also so much work to be done at a national level, and that is why, again, I appreciate Governor Hochul taking this moment to point not only New Yorkers but Americans towards a way in which we can ensure that history does not repeat itself.
Can I follow up
Please.
briefly? Since I don't hear you saying, you're not retracting what you've said in the past, you're not saying I no longer feel that this is question, these tweets are going to keep resurfacing by your rivals. How will you avoid, as a candidate, this subject coming up again and again if you're not sort of addressing those words and kind of putting them into a more current context?
Andrew wishes he was running against me in the past. He wishes that he was still living in the past, where he was the governor of this state. The sad reality for him is that he is running against me now in 2025. And despite his attempt at running an entire primary campaign based upon finding every tweet that he can that is in direct contradiction to the policies and the politics that I am running on, New Yorkers were able to see through that and elect me as the Democratic nominee with the most votes in the history of New York City mayoral primaries. And so if he wants to continue to try and litigate a race based upon tweets that are clearly out of step with the vision that I have, with the statements that I have put forward, then he is free to do so, because what he will find is that New Yorkers are more focused on the now and the vision that we have for the future than they are on an attempt to litigate this city through a medium of tweets.
Did you want to say anything about your wedding celebration? How you spent the last couple of weeks around?
It was a pleasure and a privilege to celebrate my wife Rama and my marriage in the city that I was born, Kampala, Uganda, with family and friends that have raised me, to reunite even with the doctor who delivered me 33 years ago in Nsambia Hospital, and to take a moment to appreciate all those around us who make us who we are, and to know that there may not be those same moments in the future. And this is one precious time that we had. And it was a pleasure to be there, and it is a pleasure to be home in New York City. Hey.
Part of what the former governor brought up as well yesterday with many comments was that comments like the ones you've made are part of the reason why the NYPD and many other police departments across the country are having a hard time recruiting officers, retaining officers, and that he believes it's language like that that has really affected the morale of departments across the nation. I guess I wonder if you could speak directly to police officers in this moment, especially the officer, the security officer that was killed, but also the police officer that was working security for that building, a young veteran of the department. Many of these young police officers feel the need to have a second job. Talk directly to police officers in the city in this moment who see the language, who see the political discourse, and wonder if that's no longer a career that they should pursue or want to be part of.
To the families of Aland and Officer Islam, and to security guards and police officers across this city, I want to thank them for the work that they do each and every day. And as we heard earlier, it is oftentimes work that is overlooked. It is work that we do not remember until moments such as this. And it is work that is difficult. It is work that inspires questions like the one that was asked by Officer Islam's mother when he went from being a school safety agent to becoming a police officer. She asked, "Why do you want to take on a job that is so dangerous?" And he said, to leave a legacy behind that his family would be proud of. And I know that that is a conversation that so many have across the city. And it is work that I truly appreciate. And looking at the crisis of retention that we have in this city today, to try and pin it upon tweets from 5 years ago, as opposed to the conditions of this moment, is to ignore what officers themselves are saying. When you ask officers why they leave, one of the leading causes they cite is forced overtime, an inability to have a quality of life when they know they are actually going to come home. These are the kinds of things that we have to address to ensure that not only can we keep the officers we have on the job, but that we can also deliver on public safety. And I ask that in our focus on this, we remember the officers themselves and not the discourse that is had as if it is in the interest of those officers, when often it is motivated by partisan politics.
Are you going to go to the funeral of Officer Islam? And also, when you talked to his family today, did any of them bring up any of these concerns, the tweets, your past policies on the NYPD? Did any of that come up?
None of that came up. They thanked me for coming to their home. You know, his brother-in-law, Officer Hassan, who is serving as the spokesperson for the family, told me that, in fact, he and Officer Islam had seen me once in person at Eid prayers. And they had wanted to say hello, but there were too many people in between and they never got the chance. And Officer Hassan invited me to the funeral, tomorrow, an invitation that I will take him up on, and I will attend. And they are a family that deserve the support of this city. They deserve the support of our leadership, and they deserve to be at the center of this story. Their pain, their sorrow, their heartbreak at a man who was the glue of their lives. I cannot tell you what role he played in this community. His family lives across Parkchester, Astoria, Jamaica, a family that has celebrated him for years, that has looked to him as a person they can all count on. He had been asked by a family friend if he could help them simply attend a viewing of a home, the potential that this person could purchase their first home. And he said yes, in spite of the fact that he's working 2 jobs, in spite of the fact that he's a father of 2, soon to be one of 3, in spite of the fact of all the responsibilities he had. And that same friend called today in tears to the family that not only had he lost a friend, that he had lost a guide, a brother, a bhaiya. And it is a sorrow that none of us can ever truly know, but it is one that we must, at the very least, attempt to understand.
And that was your first stop after coming back from Uganda. Talk to me about that. You had security concerns. Did you fly commercial? Did you fly private? I know the Post reported on extra security at your wedding celebration. Was that a heightened sense of security, and did you have any issues with customs?
My life is sadly not the one that it was. There are far more threats. And with that comes precautions that I wish I didn't have to take, though they are also precautions that I am immensely grateful for, especially in the example of the NYPD detail that I have here in New York City. And yes, I flew commercial, economy, both ways, and I did not have issues getting through customs, though I was prepared for the potential of those issues. And that is a sad reality of living in our President's United States. And as you said, I traveled directly to visit the family. I had called them in advance to ask if that was something that I could do. They had welcomed me into their home. They refused to let me leave until I had breakfast with them. They are an embodiment of so much of what makes this city the one that we love. And it is not lost upon me that both Officer Islam and Alain Detienne were immigrants who came to this city in the hopes of a better life. Immigrants whose own sacrifices made it possible for their own family members to have better lives. You heard from Alain's brother speaking of how he was able to become such a prolific filmmaker because of his brother's work as a security guard. I heard from members of Officer Islam's family of how a man with already so many responsibilities was still eager to help those who were in need. And as I've made calls to either the family or colleagues of all of the victims, I have heard time and time again of a sorrow and a heartbreak of lives that were cut so short. No matter if they were 27, if they were 36, or if they were in their 50s, we are speaking of New Yorkers who had so much left to offer the world and who leave behind families that cannot fully comprehend what it means to live in this world without them.
Yeah, Liz.
You talked about the SRG as originally created for, I guess, emergency responses as opposed to dealing with protests and civil unrest. I'm curious if you thought about, if you were to be mayor, how would you re-envision how the NYPD, like what kind of officers they deploy both to emergency response and also protests? It sounds like you want to disentangle.
I think what we saw on Monday was an example of how we would want a response to look like to an emergency. What we also see, however, in this city is the treatment of protest as if it requires the same. And New York City is a city that is proud of its history with protests and its exercise of the First Amendment. And what we have seen, however, is an inability to follow the rules and regulations that protects the rights of all those New Yorkers who exercise them. And what I am interested in as an outcome is how to live up to that city where New Yorkers need not choose between safety and justice, where both are delivered. And that means abiding by the rules that we've seen on kettling. That also means ensuring that we do not settle for misconduct lawsuit after misconduct lawsuit as it pertains to protests and the policing of those protests, but instead we change the manner in which we respond to those protests in the first place.
You would disband the SRG, but you've come up with another emergency response team.
There is a need to ensure that every act we take is one that is actually delivering public safety. And what we see right now, especially with regards to how we respond to protests, is not in line with that.
Yeah, Chris.
Thank you. Did Officer Islam's family say anything about whether they're inviting Andrew Cuomo to the funeral tomorrow? Then I also wanted to ask about your trip. While you were away, some of your critics found it offensive that you didn't try to return to New York City earlier after what happened Monday. Did you try to return earlier?
Officer Islam's family did not bring up the former governor in the time that I spent with them. I was originally scheduled to return this morning to depart Uganda on the 29th of July. As the news of the shooting broke, my team and I looked into earlier possible travel back to New York City and found, in fact, that our originally scheduled trip was still the earliest possible time that I could return to New York City.
Yeah.
Just curious, the phrase defund the police has essentially become relatively toxic in the past few years, given that it's sort of political loser now. But you have said that you do want to reduce the budget for overtime over at the NYPD instead. What exactly is the difference between defunding the police and that? And how would that have potentially prevented what happened yesterday?
Calling for a reduction in overtime is a call that nearly every candidate has made over the course of this campaign, and even Mayor Adams ran on in 2021, pledging, I think, to cut it in half within a short period of time. And what it speaks to is not just the way in which that we have seen that number rise year after year without any attempt at answering the cause of it, but also to what I was saying earlier, which is that many officers who are leaving the department, of which we see 200 every single month, cite forced overtime as a reason that they depart, because they do not know when their shift will end. They are working doubles, they are working triples, and we are asking these officers to do far more than any one person should be doing. And so what I am looking to do is lead a police department whose focus is on public safety, whose focus is on retaining the police officers that we have, and on ensuring that we are asking officers to do the job that they signed up to do, not to respond to the failures of city government's ability to respond to the ripping apart of our social safety net.
How would the Department of Community Safety be any better in terms of replacing what you're calling for to go away?
The Department of Community Safety would not replace the work of the NYPD. It would be done in tandem with the NYPD. And what the Department of Community Safety would do is cohere what are currently a set of responsibilities that are siloed in different parts of city government. Responsibilities like gun violence prevention, homelessness, mental health crises, hate crimes, victim services. And what we've seen, especially as it pertains to gun violence prevention, is we know that there are successful strategies that can be employed that have been shown to have effect in the manner that was intended here in New York City, but are still not operating at the full scale. They are still operating at a pilot level. And that's why we have put forward proposals to increase the funding for not only the crisis management system, but also the manner in which New York City approaches gun violence prevention. And I look to inspiration for what other police departments have done elsewhere in the country, where we have seen a police chief describe the manner in which, to use his words, hugging the cactus allowed the police department to focus on serious crimes. And what he meant by that was coming to terms with the fact that the incredible number of mental health calls that the department was being asked to be responsible for was prohibiting them from responding to the very crimes that they had all signed up to respond to. Today, the NYPD receives around 200,000 mental health calls a year. And we know that in asking them to respond to those, we are also making it more difficult for them to respond to the very kinds of crimes that New Yorkers look to the NYPD to be their first responders to.
We'll take 2 more questions and we have to wrap. Emma? Hi.
So can you take us, were you asleep when the shooting happened? Were you awoken during the night? And then in those hours afterwards, I think it was like 3 or 4 in the morning where you were, did you speak with the mayor, the police commissioner? It sounds like you spoke with the families before you got on the flight.
I was awoken by a member of my team, Morris Katz, around 4 a.m. local time in Uganda, and informed of the news of the shooting, soon after which we put out a statement. In the day that followed, I spoke to a number of New Yorkers, including families and or colleagues of victims, conversations that continue through this day. And I have not spoken with the mayor at this time.
What about the police commissioner?
I've had a brief conversation with the police commissioner. Yes.
Okay, last question, Morgan.
Hi, thank you so much for taking questions. So I just wanted to follow up. There was some tweets that have been surfacing, and one of them you say that nature is healing, quote tweeting one where a cop is crying. Liz was kind of asking about it before. I just think when some people see these tweets, a lot of people in New York City have family members who are law enforcement, and it seems to be mocking a mental health of cops, where mental health for cops is already on the rise, especially those struggling with mental health. So I just wanted to give you a chance to respond and really show and explain exactly, what are your going to be your intentions to maybe help with the mental health of police officers, and exactly with those statements, could you help clarify and help explain, why you said what you said and what you hope to say in the future?
To be very clear, as I have been over the course of this campaign, I am not defunding the police. I am not running to defund the police. Andrew Cuomo is far more comfortable living his life in the past and then attacking tweets of 2020 than in running against the campaign that we have been leading for the last 8 months. The tweet that you referred to is a tweet that is out of step with the way in which I not only view police officers, the immense work that they do in this city, but also the seriousness with which we need to treat that work and the difficulties that come with that work. And so much of what I've shared today has been out of a vision of how to deliver on that which motivated so many to join the department. I am, as was said by Henry earlier, running as a candidate who is not fixed in time, one that learns and one that leads. And part of that means admitting, as I have grown, and part of that also means focusing on the people who deserve to be spoken about. Because our politics too often creates incentives to spend moments of mourning discussing other candidates, when in fact, many of these victims have not even been buried yet. We are speaking of families who are organizing funerals. And these families' focus is solely on those that they have lost. And we have seen that what they deserve is a moment of empathy, of support, of honor. And what they deserve in the future is one of leadership that seeks to embody those things while ensuring that our focus is on delivering that public safety. And that is who I will be as the next mayor.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yes. Hey, uniform.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
I'm not with campaign. Oh, I'm with media. Yeah. Sorry.
It may still be on. I forget.
I'm sorry.
Especially not allowed back.
We got it.
So stupid.
Always got it.